I am here with Chad Scott of the Shasta Builders Exchange, and we're going to talk a little bit about building in the region and the effects of COVID-19 and some of the more long-term issues that we've been dealing with. So thank you so much for joining me, Chad.
Thanks for inviting me.
So it seems like construction up here anyway has largely advanced relatively unchanged. So while there have been some temporary changes on job sites, it sounds like you maybe have had a chance to continue with some of the plans you've already made for the future. Are there things that you're working on now or that you're hoping to work on soon for the region?
Before I answer that, I'd just like to follow up. Our trades training program, our seminars, all of that in-person stuff was put on pause very early on. We just did not have a way to have 30 people come in for a class or 40 people show up, maybe on a double class night, coming from wherever they were, and to keep them separated and safe. So all of our training programs have been on pause since early March. You know, we're looking to get some state training dollars to help with what was already a high unemployment area for the state. I'm going to imagine in a post-COVID world, that number will still be a struggle. So we're looking at ways that we can help employers train the employees that they need and give these people the time. So the state is able to help us cover some of those fees. Maybe it's like, send them over to training. We'll pay for the hours that they're here learning. You pay for them while they're on the job. And together we'll create the kind of employee that you want. So we've applied for that. SpaceX didn't get the money, so I'm hoping to get that same pool, get a piece of his money.
Yeah, for sure. Probably a little less.
This next month when we go to the panel. And we're expanding also with some federal programs, in particular on the safety side of things, which I'd really like to continue to grow and be a safety training and hub here in the North State, in addition to the kind of career journeyman stuff. So all that's been, in the fire. We've been working with Shasta College to develop some new programs and collaboration, public-private partnership. They have awesome talent, and we're smaller and nimble. So by combining our two core competencies, we're hoping to get something that's great.
I love hearing about those partnerships with our educational institutions in particular, because it means we're growing our economy organically based on people who are already here, who have something to contribute.
We have a program that we're able to launch this summer with assistance from United Way and some grant opportunities from Reading Rancheria, Merchants Bank, Tri-Counties Bank, and a few other groups where we're going to be able to offer just like an intro to construction course. That'll be starting soon. I mean, we already have a small group. I want to limit it to 10 per group. So we already have one fully filled out, and I want to have maybe 2 more. And I got a waiting list of 40 people, so it shouldn't be too hard.
No kidding. That's great. That demand really reflects not only the needs of the region, but also the value of the exchange programs. I want to talk a little bit about home building. You laugh. That's on everybody's mind. Well, I mean, everybody's mind.
Not because it's funny. That was an uncomfortable chuckle because
COVID,
I know
yeah.
it's a Pandora's box of issues.
Indeed. Yeah. I mentioned earlier we wanted to keep this short, so maybe this isn't the topic to bring up.
No, I mean, actually, it's so big that it might even be easier to talk about it way more superficially.
Excellent. All right. So in 2 minutes or less, how do we get to 100,000 homes annually in our state, or more, ideally?
I think it's an additional 100,000.
Yes.
Because we've hit those numbers in the past, in the
Yes.
80s, the early 2000s, we exceeded it. Yeah, it's a lot of pieces. I think one of the biggest struggles that our state has are economically massive clusters. So
Mm.
you got to be close to these jobs. To be close to those jobs, you start running out of land and space. So it becomes very expensive in the Bay Area to build a new home, even though that might be where most of that work is. Same thing in LA, San Diego, Sacramento, and down through the valley. Um, so we probably need to figure out a jobs distribution kind of option. Um, and sadly, like there's things on both sides where there's left leaning or right leaning that probably have good options or good ideas. But hey, maybe Glenn County and North is a tax-free zone for businesses to relocate. So that way we can move take some of that heat off the housing market, get salaries and housing a little more closely aligned in some areas. I think it's going to require some big picture thinking. Things like accessory dwelling units, making those inexpensive and easy to establish. Because there's plenty of people, maybe they don't want to live in an apartment building. They'd be very happy living on a second home on a property. And if that process is streamlined, made less expensive, then maybe that property owner would have great motivation to offer a long-term rental solution to that. The city of Reading is looking to actually get a package together of pre-engineered, pre-approved plans. They will pay the architects and designers, the engineers in that contract to make it happen. And then people could come into the Builders Exchange or to the city, pull that information off the shelf, ready to go with a list of contractors in the area, as well as all the requirements. It will be as easy as we could figure out how to get all the permits, all the design, and that kind of stuff. You're always welcome to build your dream home in the backyard. But what if you just want a home and you don't want to spend $30,000 on that design process? Well, now you got an opportunity right there, and that makes that project pencil out a little more neatly.
Yeah, absolutely, and adds to our home stock here in the region. That's great. I love that.
Yeah, and it is written for long-term rentals. These won't be Airbnbs. This will be housing students in a community or even young families who are saving up rather than stretching that dollar.
Sure. That's great. That's really good news. I'm glad to hear some innovation is happening in our region. That's great.
Yeah. Now we just got to figure out a way to keep the neighbors happy. That's always a challenge. And all across the country, California is no exception, but the NIMBYs are often very vocal and very influential. We have no shortage of housing opportunities here locally that have basically been pulled off the menu because the neighbors just don't want anything, even if it's miles down the road. They don't even want to know that it's in their zip code, which I think is unfortunate.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. And actually that leads me to another one of the questions I had, which is policy hurdles or maybe other hurdles that might get in the way of progress from the Shasta Builders Exchange perspective or from your members' perspective.
Yeah, well, it's easy when I ask my members. They just say, yeah, get out of the way. Let us do it. But honestly, that works for a while. But you never want to live in an area that has no regulations and has no rules. Those of us who have opportunities to travel to the third world can see what that looks like. And none of us wants that here, especially not in places where we live and raise our families. So somewhere between nobody looks at anything, or you just bribe your way to whatever you want to have happen, and having a process that is so slow and cumbersome, it takes years to get a home built or a commercial project approved. Unfortunately, that's another one of those where we're going to have to really look at from a state level and from the private sector what it's going to take. Because when it's years in development, that just adds to the expenses, probably unnecessarily.
Yeah.
Unless your job is to look at these developments for years at a time and slow walk it. And
Yeah. Yeah, I feel sometimes like there might be a little conflict of interest in there, because I do think that there is an interest in the regulatory side of preserving regulatory oversight to the detriment of projects happening. Um,
yeah, it's tough. Like I said, like I don't think going all in on one side or the other
yeah.
is the answer. So what's it going to take to make it effective and responsive and responsible? I would be happy to support those kinds of projects.
My last question is about affordable housing. We talked a little bit about housing in general, and you mentioned that sort of very dense economic development that happens in our state that's not up here. But still, we do have a hard time with affordable housing provision in our region. Any thoughts on that? Have your members had experience with those projects?
On the affordable housing projects, yeah, I mean, some have really specialized in finding their way and navigating what those requirements are. I think K2 is probably like the best example. Brent Weaver's got some projects that also will always include some component of that. And that works on several levels. I mean, it makes his project a less expensive endeavor, which means that the capital required can be amassed more quickly. And it also allows opportunity for people to move in at an affordable price. So on that is an example of where that partnership helps one group of people. It helps the developer get the project done. There's an incentive on the regulatory side to see it happen. So those aren't easy to navigate, but when they do, I think there are enough wins among everybody that you can look and say, well, excellent. I mean, we got something there that makes some sense. More of that. It's not easy. I'm not going to pretend like these regulatory burdens we have in the state are not going to slow things down, but I also appreciate why we want them. So you want the other guy to follow the rules.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the golden rule to some extent. Yeah.
You don't want to eat at the restaurant that doesn't follow the rules.
Indeed.
So, or live in a home that maybe wasn't built to code.
Chad, it's really interesting to talk about building from sort of a holistic policy perspective, and I appreciate your insights on that. And is there anything else that we should know about this region, about building, about as the recession hits, what's it look like? Anything else you'd like to add?
Well, we're still optimistic in Shasta County and the North State more broadly, downtown is lit up with plenty of projects and buildings and stuff. Looks like Dignity Health is going to be moving forward. Bethel will be coming online. These are big projects, so it's a lot of families that will see some of those dollars, and then that will go to the rest of us as they live and work in the community.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Chad, for your time and for the way that you serve our community. It's really, really important and a cornerstone, really, of what we're doing here, literally and figuratively.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not much of a builder, so I found my talent at being able to endure almost endless meetings. So.
That is a talent, absolutely. Before we
they
hang
pay me
up,
to do that for them.
and willingly, I'm sure. Hey, before we hang up, you got to tell me about that light changing color thing in your sort of left sector there.
Oh, up there? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a white elephant gift I got a few years ago. So I have it right up there next to my second place hot dog eating trophy.
Oh, I love it.
And looks like this is a little centerpiece that we had designed from one of the local schools for our annual gala for the trade school.
Oh, very
And
nice.
then I guess we have Caesar with some pencils stuck in his back.
Oh, very nice.
It's a fun little model I printed out at home on the 3D printer.
That's cool.
So there's good times around here.